So this is these Dragon Ball Sparking Zero Steam charts. So this is when the first game came out. Obviously there's like around 100,000 players, or just shy of 100,000 players. Now we're looking at low 10s to mid 10s to even under 10,000 players. Like even right here it's like 7,000 players, right? However, 5 minutes ago there was 14,000 live players playing this game. So in about a month or close to a month, going from 100,000 to under 10,000, the player base has dropped by 90%. But is this a bad thing? The short answer, no. Long answer, maybe. Now, of course, every single game on the planet does go through this. The fall off in player base isn't abnormal, and obviously you'll have the most players on launch, but it dies down as time goes on. Some games experience this more than others, and this only shows you the Steam charts, not Xbox or PlayStation. But I feel like it's still important to look at this data and figure out why Dragon Ball Sparking Zero lost 90% of its player base and why it can continue to lose more players as time goes on. Let's start with the gameplay. This game is fun as fuck, don't get me wrong. I love playing this game, but like many other games, this game has its fair share of issues. For one, the offline multiplayer is boring. The only stage you can play offline is the hyperbolic time chamber. That's it. We can guess why there might be no other stages you can play, like maybe the game has some rendering issues, but in the past, if Budokai Tenkaichi games had all the stages for split screen multiplayer, especially on weaker consoles, it's no excuse that the more powerful hardware we have today only offers one playable stage for offline multiplayer. While we're on the topic of stages, there are a lot of stages this game doesn't have. Currently we only have 12 unique stages with some different time settings. Now Budokai Tenkaichi 3 has 23 unique stages, almost double the amount of stages, and this is the predecessor to Sparking Zero. The fact that we don't have stages like Hell, Kame House, Kami's Lookout, Beerus' Planet, Universe 6 Tournament Stage, etc. is pretty embarrassing. But going back to the gameplay, let's start with something that a lot of people complain about, and it's the defense, mainly perception. Perception, in my opinion, is a dumb fucking mechanic. It's cool at first because it adds to that Dragon Ball style and action you see from the anime, and moves like Sonic Sway is always and still is satisfying to pull off and watch. But perception and super perception shouldn't be as good as it is. It's a mechanic with little to no drawbacks, and you will see people spamming this online. It's also a no skill move, and it's super easy to pull off. Now perception or super perception does cost 1 skill point, but regular perception is spammed way too much. You probably have seen so many people online just standing there waiting for you to attack while holding down perception. Sure, it does drain your ki the longer you hold down perception, and yes, there are ways to counter it, like grabbing the opponent, ki blast, or even throwing a super or ultimate in their face. But sometimes it gets to the point where you're just throwing ki blasts or Tekken grabs more than you're actually throwing straight hands to one another. In my opinion, perception makes this game way less fun and kills a lot of the enjoyment. Another defensive mechanic that gets complaints are vanishes. At first, vanishing is pretty cool because it makes you feel like the anime, but just like perception, there aren't too many drawbacks with vanishing. The only thing is when you pull off a vanish, you lose a little bit of ki, but that ki depletion is so minor that you and your opponent can be vanishing each other's vanishes for like 2 minutes straight until somebody either messes up their timing or loses their ki. And the timing isn't too difficult either, because once you get the hang of it, it's very easy to do. This Vanish War stalls out the match, which again makes it boring. It's cool at first, but now it's dragged on. Speaking of stalling and slow, this one might be more of a skill issue with me and not really the game's fault, but I wish matches were longer because I've lost a lot of matches to just time out. Some people online really like to stall out matches using these defensive mechanics or even Yajirobe or whatever, constantly switching out their character to heal and waiting for the timer to run out. It's not the first game I've played where someone tries to win a match by stalling out the timer, but when defensive mechanics like perception and vanishing is in play, it slows down the pace of the game. People like to run to the timer, and then it gives the opponent an easier time to switch out characters. Now, we talked about perception, vanishing, and stalling, but one of the defensive mechanics I haven't talked about yet is super counters. You need to know how to perform super counters in order to stop backshot combos or even combos in general. However, I don't actually have a problem with this mechanic because it takes skill. It's based on precise timing that isn't easy to do, but is important for you to know on how you can stop your opponent when they hit you in a combo, including backshot combos. However, at higher levels of gameplay where some players can super counter literally everything frame by frame, then it gets annoying and I want to smash my controller. But overall, for the player base, I think it's good to have this mechanic or something like this. The combos in this game are really fun to pull off, and you can do so many combos. But because there's so many defensive tools in this game, there are no true combos. There are many ways for your opponent to stop your combos, which is why most people always try to set up a backshot combo, because those are the hardest to stop in game. If the devs are able to adjust the defensive mechanics in the game and make them less annoying and less spammy, then I think this game will be a lot more fun. For example, do what Naruto X Boruto does and have a substitution jutsu gauge. For Sparking Zero, this will be a vanishing gauge, and you only get up to, let's say for example, 4 vanishes per gauge. Although the gauge will refill over time, you are limited to how many times you can vanish, and you gotta be more strategic with it. Another thing they can do is add more recovery time to perception. So when you are coming out of perception, if your opponent didn't hit you, they have enough time to punish you for being a little bitch, or give perception a set number of active frames so your opponent can't hold on to perception until the next match. Or maybe have the ability to force switch out your opponent's characters like Dragon Ball Fighters, but this one might be a little bit more tricky to work around since there is an exchange timer in play. But that's just the gameplay aspect of Sparking Zero and how it can have a negative impact on the decline of this game's player base and how it can potentially continue that decline. Other reasons is the offline content. Story mode is subjective to the player, but I think it's fun. It could have some improvements like better cutscenes, yes, of course, but it's interesting to play from different perspectives and taking different paths that could change the outcome of the original story we already knew. Custom battles is a cool concept, and although I thought there would be much more to this, I personally don't find this as enjoying, or I've gotten a little bit bored of it after some time. Now, this is my personal opinion. If you watching this enjoy custom battles and always love playing custom battles, then obviously do you, right? Now, in regards to customization, this game doesn't offer as much customization that a lot of people initially thought. We thought there would be way more accessories, especially considering there's a lot of accessory tabs, more costumes, potentially different moves. For example, Power Pole Goku, the adult form, which is a costume you get from the Ultimate Edition, gets a new super attack. But this department of customization as a whole is lacking in my opinion. For players to keep playing their game, it needs to have replayability, something they can do that'll keep them engaged and entertained for hours on end. Meaning, if players have either skipped the story or completed it, which by now many people have, the only offline content they get is custom episodes and offline multiplayer with friends and family. But the custom battles will depend on the person whether it's for them or not. For me, not really. For others, it can be the only reason why they keep playing this game. But split screen only has one stage, so that can make things get boring very quickly. So overall, there isn't a lot of offline content you can do that will make this game fun and engaging, which means you gotta go online. But if online matches are annoying to play because of all the gameplay issues I talked about earlier, and sometimes even the netcode bending you over nicely, then there will be times where you don't even want to play the game anymore. I don't want this game to die anytime soon, especially since I spent a lot of fucking money buying the Ultimate Edition, but something has to change. This game did a lot of things well, and I would rank it an 8.5, maybe even 9 out of 10 overall. But if I, along with other players, want to keep playing this game for months on months, even for a couple years, changes need to be made for both offline and online content for players to be hooked. Yes, there is DLC coming, but Beast Gohan will not be the saving grace for this game. He will just be a temporary fix to the overall problems this game currently has.